Self be true.
Melvin, all right. Melvin, stop. You can say the rest when you come out of the coma. Sit down.
We've just spent the last 3 weeks going over everything to do with pacing and how things are done. Yeah, I've lost the beat again. And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell. I'm Rob the host, and this is another look deep into what makes a story, a theory on storytelling by a storyteller who believes that every story has merit. And tonight's episode is Putting It All Together, the final episode on pacing for a while at least. Now, we've gone over everything, so let's try to unpack it and put it all together. In theory, the idea of pacing is how fast the story comes about, how the audience feels on the ride. Is it quick? Is it slow? And all of this is a chance for me to explore my own pacing in my own stories. However, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. I do weekly videos like this to try to come up with theories on how and why we tell stories. But let's do a quick recap. In the first episode, we just did generalities, and we said exactly what the pacing is, as I just did. However, we also took a look at a couple of different stories. We went through, over the course of the whole month, 3 of them. Babylon 5, Game of Thrones, and Death Note. And we chose those because Babylon 5 had some great examples of pacing. Death Note and Game of Thrones had changed pacing depending on what was going on. Season by season in Game of Thrones, and adaptation versions for Death Note. Once we got into what the scene and sequel was, is when we really needed those examples. Because what we need is how fast things happen and how much time you have to react to them. All of this is broken down into acts, sequences, scenes, and beats. At some point I think I'm going to go back over acts and sequence again, but we'll come back to that. Then last week we did what I called the acts and setups, and we talked about the fact that there's a different structure depending on which act is which, but we actually spent most of last week working on the smallest of building blocks for the stories, and that is the beats. Those little moments that change how a scene runs one way or another. And now we have to take all of that and put it all together. And what we have is patterns and beats that make up a roller coaster of a story. Now, each story is a little bit different, because could you imagine how boring it would be if every roller coaster were the same, or if every song used the same beat? Dun 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 dun. Bum 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 bum. You're welcome for getting that stuck in your head, by the way. Now, of course, some stories use the same beats. Hell, some sample the same song. Once again, dun 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 dun. But each one feels a little bit different, and we use the different patterns to make them different. Let's take a look at Babylon 5 again, and let's take a look at a scene where everything changes in multiple ways.
Just a second. Come. Sorry, I was in the...
Bastards! Those cold-hearted rat bastards!
Susan?
When I heard about it, I thought it was just a rumor. I mean, we get so many of them. Oh, God, John, I just want to grab them and just... This is it! This is it!
What? What is it? What?
Here, this was recorded by a transport bringing relief supplies to Proxima 3. As soon as this destroyer came through the gate, the other ships identified themselves as commercial liners. They were carrying the sick and the wounded from where President Clark's been hitting them. Women, children, the sick, the infirm, 2,000 civilians per ship crammed in like sardines.
My God.
10,000 civilians whose only crime was trying to get out of the damn killing zone. I am putting this on VOR as soon as I calm down.
This madness has gone on long enough. I don't care if we're ready yet. I don't care if we're outnumbered or outgunned. I don't care what ISN says about us. This stops, and it stops now. Now, if Earth wants to declare war on us, then it is time that we took the war to Clark. You tell the others. Starting right now, we fight back, and we fight back hard.
I thought you were looking for some other way than firing at our own ships. They were following orders.
Any crew that executes an order like that is guilty of war crimes, and they deserve whatever they get. Now, we're riding in, Susan. Anybody who wants to defect and join us, fine. If they get in our way, we'll knock them down. If they kill one of our ships, we'll kill 3 of theirs, and we keep going. Never slow down, and we won't stop. Now, we're going after the colonies, then Mars, then Earth. God help anybody who gets in our way.
Did you catch all of that? Did you see where the scene ended and the sequel began? I'll give you a hint. It was when the credits rolled, because that's how you end a fast-paced episode, and you leave them wanting more. Did you catch all the beats, the little moments where Sheridan's emotions changed at every step? How about when Ivanova and him almost switch places and she becomes the calm, rational one? And now that you've had a chance to explore those, let's talk about my opinions of the 2 Death Note series again. Because that's one of the 2 things that got me interested in telling this about pacing and beats and the entire way we build stories. See, in the live-action version, we have scenes like this that are fast-paced in of themselves, but still just cram too much in. If between the 2 series, the anime and the live-action, I'd say the anime goes too slow and the movie goes too fast. So, there's got to be a middle point in there. But you see, like the roller coaster, at every step of the way, there are people who think this way's better, that way's better. Maybe fast-paced is better. Maybe the movie's better. Maybe slow-paced is better. It gives you more time to think. More sequel, less scene. And of course, each medium has their own benefit, getting in someone's head or not, depending on what you're doing. Which brings me back to the Game of Thrones problem as well, where the books are extremely high on sequel, where the books have a slow pace, even slower if you're trying to read. And where are my Winds of Winter, George? But the show's gotten faster each season, to the point where this season, it's moving at super speed. And the more I've been thinking about it, the more question I have. Would their sequence be better if every time we split from one scene to another, instead of skipping over all the travel time, unless there's some form of story we need to tell during it, what if we used the opening sequence not as an opening sequence? What if they had literally done, every time you go from Winterfell to King's Landing, you pull up, you show the sun astrolabe thingy, and the distance between them, then you zoom back into King's Landing. You don't even need to write 30 days later on the screen. Just that, like the Indiana Jones map, showing the travel, showing that time is passing. If you had done that this season especially, I want you to think about them sitting on that frozen island. If you had pulled up, saw that they were some distance from the wall, then got back to the wall, showing Gendry getting there and telling them to send the Raven, then pulled up to the astrolabe again, then pulled down to Dany getting on her dragon, then pulled back up and went back down to the island, would that have allowed to showcase how much time had passed? I don't know, that was just an off-the-cuff idea. Either way, again, the speed of the pacing of the story changes based on the way it's written, and that affects how we see the story. Let's take a look back at Babylon 5 again one more time. We paced this one out. We did what all the beats are. But at the end of the day, it is just so badass and put together of a scene in a season where things were already speeding up. In fact, Babylon 5 did the same thing Game of Thrones is doing now. Each season, 1, 2, 3, 4, the pacing increased. So why did it work for Babylon 5 and not for Game of Thrones? In fact, of all of the stories I go over, they have the most in common. A long-dormant enemy, an ally that's been hidden away, a savior that comes back from the dead, that can lead the troops, a story that slowly unfolds over time. Babylon 5 was 5 years, 4.5 of which were awesome. Game of Thrones is already going on year 7. Notice the difference. By the halfway point of Babylon 5, 2.5 seasons in, we had seen shadow ships. By the time we got to the end of Season 3, we already had a shadow war. In fact, the end of Season 3 is Sheridan's big moment at Zahadum. So as we take a look at the stories and why they're important, I think that pacing is one of those things that we really need to pay attention to. Because at the end of the day, the pacing is what gets us in the story. George Martin created A Song of Ice and Fire in such a way that it drew us in. We wanted more. Now, whether you like the fact that we have to wait 10 years in between books or not, you have to admit, he knew a thing or two about pacing in the story. Yet even he got lost along the way. The first 3 books had pretty much the same exact characters that we had point of views for. Book 4 introduced new point of views trying to help tie things up. Book 5 expanded even more. As we're waiting for Book 6, we don't know who's going to get a point of view chapter. And all of this is chasing us back to how to build a story, how to pace a story, how to make the roller coaster feel exciting but still be safe. And my advice? Play with it. I'm going to go back and look at all of my stories that I've written, none of which have been published yet, and see if I can't punch up that pacing now that I've done all this research. What about you guys? Is there any story that you did or didn't like that now that you have a better understanding of what pacing means, you have a reason why you liked it? Do you like faster-paced or shorter-paced stories? Me, I like a mix. I like there to be fast, hard moments and slow, soft ones. But it's gotten to that time where I need to ask you to like and share this video if you liked it. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because we're going into October, and October is going to be another Halloween spectacular. So I may not get back to this type of story theory video until maybe even the new year, with everything coming up at the end of the year. But I'm trying to build a community here, one where we can talk about the hows and the whys of storytelling, and I'm going to promise you that next year there will be more videos like these on the actual building blocks. Maybe I'll actually make a whole playlist for it. I'd love your comments and thoughts so that we can react to each other and see things through. For now, I'd like to thank you for watching and walking with me through the heart of the stories we tell.